just looking at the board here, we have 4 board members, Director Bankers, Director Daniels, I think Director Loma is outside. Just getting some food out there. So
Director Daniels will be
the
back.
policy is listed first and special population next. Can we do the special populations first so we can let our staff who have had a long evening, they can go back home, and then we can quickly circle back with the policy conversation. Is the board okay with that?
If
Okay.
they are.
They are, okay, go ahead. So we will do special populations first, and is this being recorded? Just make sure.
You're good, Yep, you're good.
Okay, so with that, we are at work session. Superintendent Gall, I will lead you into the conversation on special populations, and you can lead with whichever group wants to go first.
So I'm gonna hand this over to Tamara, but I made a comment earlier that gives us a good dovetail. I talked about the strength of our opportunity academies. One of the things that we don't spend enough time talking and celebrating about is the incredible supports that we have for special populations in District 11. You will hear from those leaders here through Tamara in a moment, but it has been an incredible honor and an opportunity to come to a district that has been so intentionally invested in these different special populations and ensuring that they are given the appropriate supports and to the opportunities to succeed in the way that they have. Tamara?
Great. Yes, and we're just making sure.
So before you, so understanding that all of us, understanding it's been a long evening and we
Yes.
still have a little bit of work to do.
Yes.
Let's keep the presentation concise. I know that board members have already looked at it, and the feedback to the board also is, let's make your questions pertinent to what's in here and relevant questions. If there are other additional questions, board, you can always circle back with Ms. Acevedo, and then she can direct you to the respective department to get the questions answered.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll keep it very concise. The team's been working on this. This is typical for us to present at this time of year, and it's really important. I'll quickly say, as a lifetime educator, as a principal leader as well, I had the opportunity to be a principal in a school that had a traditional program, that had a special education deaf, hard of hearing program in addition to mild moderate, that had English as a second language supports. And when we say in D11 that we teach all students includes the incredible programming that we do for our special populations. And it only works if we're doing that. As part of that, I want to recognize that we've had opportunities, the superintendent and I recently, to see these programs in action. Just last night, the superintendent and I went to the SEAC Awards that they had, which is an incredible connection with our community. We got to see our educators being recognized for their incredible work with our special populations and special education. Emily and I, she's set up this whole year tours in our gifted and talented program and population magnet programs and across the school, so we can have a better sense of the incredible work that's going on there and where we're headed next. I just recently had the opportunity with Nicole. She does regular ongoing meetings with our CLDE teachers that we've given an investment to as a board, thank you very much, in increased staffing to talk specifically about our high school programming and the incredible work and the incredible needs that are there. So when we say, like, yes, we can go quickly through this presentation, but our special population work is so critical and crucial to our overall system. It goes without saying. With that, the 3 presentations that you'll see tonight, from starting with culturally and linguistically diverse education, I believe going into gifted and talented next, and then ending with special education. We'll follow the same sort of structure. We'll talk about the overview of staffing. It's directly connected to budget. We'll go into our dial-in supports and our supports overall. This goes with our new model that we've worked and connected to our area and superintendent model. We will also talk about goals, priorities, and commitments. Each group will talk about our an overview of our data, make the link to our major improvement strategy, invest first instruction, and then we'll end there. Director Daniels, earlier, connected to our budget conversation with early childhood, you had questions about what are we doing with programming. And as part of special populations, Judy will talk, we made sure to include data specifically, I think you saw it in the previewed information, specifically on early childhood. Our strong programming is continuing, our Sarah Carlson, our Director of Early Childhood, is ensuring, and the superintendent and I are supporting her continuing that strong programming even as we're expanding out. And what you will see in the data is it's incredible data. We pulled out alignment that would go into elementary, but when we look at quantitative or mathematics, literacy data, and some of the other areas, we're doing well, and it really will help us to stop the gap before it starts. With that, I will turn it over to Nicole to start with CLD.
Thank you. So as an office full of acronyms, I will just start with some clarification. We are the Culturally and Linguistically Diverse Education Office, CLDE. We run a program at called English as a Second Language, ESL, and we serve our D11's multilingual learners, also known as MLs. Previously, you might be more familiar with the term ELL. Same students, the term multilingual learners focuses on their assets rather than viewing their emerging bilingualism as an intervention need. As you know, language is a socially based skill, meaning we don't learn it well and fluently unless we have real-time opportunities to practice. And for this reason, our program focuses not only on a dialed-in support model, but also a wraparound support model. This year, we've been able to adapt to significant changes in our population, in state identification requirements, and our integration into PowerSchool to create a foundation of communication and collaboration among our teachers, schools, and families. Our staffing model is based on the intensity of the needs of our students. So as you might imagine, a non-English proficient or NEP student would qualify for a higher level of services and require more intensive services. For example, this student might be a refugee with limited or interrupted schooling, a traumatic background, and therefore they would score a lower proficiency on the READA screener. An LEP student or limited English proficient might be a student who has lived most of their life in the US, maybe been back to their home country, and then maybe come back and is a returning student. So because students require very different levels and individual types of support, this intensity model supports the flexibility of this need and is also comparable to the majority of the districts in the Pikes Peak region. We currently have 34.5 CLD teachers and 19 EAs in our schools, and they further the support for students both inside the classroom with integrated English language development as well as directed ELD instruction. As our population continues to grow and move into schools that historically have not seen multilingual learners, we are able to appropriately and equitably adjust allocations to ensure schools are providing services to all students at all levels. Your support in moving the total allocation closer to 50 FTE will allow us to move from focusing on the absolute bare minimum of mostly direct ELD instruction to a more integrated and inclusive approach to ELD instruction, so that students have ensured opportunities to authentically practice and use language in the classroom. With this addition, we were able to move 5 teachers from serving 5 schools each down to 3 schools, and also provide support to schools that were not previously receiving support. We now will be able to position our staff to support students in being successful and participating members of their school, the district, and our community. Our dialed-in supports start with our office, with myself and our TOSA. Also with the increased allocation, we will be able to add an additional TOSA to support our secondary schools and our alternative campuses. We will also be able to implement English language development plans for our newcomer students to support them as they progress both linguistically and academically. We are using research-based approved curriculum at the elementary level, the secondary level, and the newcomer level. You all were able to see that adoption curriculum earlier this year. We also have ELL community liaison support at the elementary, middle, and high school, and those ladies are a foundational support in reaching our students and families. We also will continue our work with our partners in refugee and migrant services, with Lutheran Family Services and in the Migrant End Office. Our identification process starts with enrollment at the home language survey. We then, if a language other than English is noted, we must administer the screener, and from there we interview parents and students. Our teachers collect a body of evidence, eligibility determination is acquired, and then services are put in place. The big shift to note here is that previously our identification process, the WIDA screener and the parent and student interviews were flipped, so we were able to interview students and parents before we administered the screener. By screening all the students with a language other than English from the start, we are expecting an increase in students who qualify for services. However, with the support of a more robust and increased staff, we will be able to navigate through this process to better understand our enrolling students and then gather appropriate data based on the whole student, which will in turn help to support them through to graduation. Currently, we are serving about 1,282 students. However, it's important to remember that the additional number shown on the slide represents those who qualify but whose parents have decided to decline services. This decline or acceptance of services can change at any given time and as many times as parents feel necessary. The monitor students are students who have officially met the threshold for the state requirements and no longer qualify for services, but still require collaboration with teachers and a collected body of evidence as they move through the state's redesignation process. This is similar for exited students. Thanks to our new FTE allocations, we'll be able to support this process more intimately and ultimately have more intentionality in supporting our graduation rate and identifying students who qualify for the seal of biliteracy. As you can see in the graph, Spanish is by far our most common language at about 92-93%, with the others following at about 0.5% each. Some very strong shifts with our multilingual students to note is that we don't expect that our increase will slow down. By being proactive and adjusting our program, we are able to respond to our tripled amount of refugee students and our quadrupled amount of migrant ed students. A great majority of our new students are at the newcomer or NEP level. Not only are these students newcomers, but we are also finding that a large number of our adolescents are coming to us with very low to no foundational literacy skills in their first language. This is a huge curricular and programmatic shift for our secondary schools. Best first instruction is really CLD 101. Working to establish a relationship so that we can spark curiosity and provide an understanding of the why for our students will establish necessary trust between teachers and students and schools and families. Knowing our students through the interview process and then with the integration of an ELD plan, we can really focus on narrowing students' goals so that they're attainable, and all of which leads to being able to plan purposefully and ensure student engagement. Scaffolding instruction and making content comprehensible is essential in working with ML students and will allow them to access new learning, make sense of it, and continue to participate meaningfully through the academic rigor they are faced with. Understanding second language acquisition and asset-based instruction is essential to creating and providing a safe environment for multilingual learners to actually practice the language, which requires a level of social interaction that is necessary to achieve proficiency in the English language. Since we were thankfully able to increase our FTE, we will now be able to not only support students with their learning, but also support teachers and building staff with implementing strategies that work within the BFI framework. Collaborative planning for learning will not only support our ML students, but also those who struggle with overcoming barriers to learning. Our priorities and commitments come from a similar place of support. We will continue to foster family engagement, support BFI through intentional collaboration with the CNI team, continuing our special education consultation for identification, and also gifted and talented collaboration, which I'll let Emily go into more detail on during her presentation. We will also focus on professional learning at the school level, at our CLD teacher level, at the classroom teacher and grade level, teacher level, and with administrators and school staff, and also with our administrative educational assistants. As I'm sure you're aware, this group of parents are historically hard to reach for many reasons. They have language barriers, cultural barriers, employment barriers, childcare barriers, and the list could go on and on. We will continue to work toward extending our community outreach with our community liaisons, who, as I mentioned, are the backbone of reaching our parents. We will also continue our partnership with D11 Engage in our implementation of our ReachWell pilot, which is a communication platform that we're piloting with about 9 schools. It allows parents to access all district and school communication in one central location with the parent's language of choice. The program offers over 130 different languages and multiple modalities for receiving that information. They also support families with limited literacy. We know that our parents are our students' first teachers, and as such, bless you, their advocacy, involvement, and partnership, regardless of language or cultural background, is a key indicator for student success. Their support will ultimately lead to not only reaching our students, but to keeping our students engaged in school so they are graduating with the skills needed to be successful community members. Thank you for listening. Do you have any questions? That was fast and furious.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Board members, thoughts, questions? Go ahead.
Just one question. So with the additional FTE, how many, does it say ELL? That's
You're okay.
not the right
I
word.
do it all the
time. Does that put us at in the district?
51.5.
Okay.
Is that all teaching staff position? You had like 2 teachers and assistants?
The EA number did not change, just the certified teachers.
Okay, certified teachers goes up to 51.
Correct.
And you are, I don't know where we are with the hiring process and stuff like that. Are you confident that we would be able to reach close to that hiring number?
Yes, and with schools that are struggling to meet that, we do have some plans in place with HR and some collaboration.
Okay, this is where like you got to come back and re-emphasize. With the $50,000 salary increase that you I'm just
Yes,
saying out there.
we
But
are
hopefully that
so
helps.
grateful. Yes,
It should attract people, right?
yep, we think so.
That's right.
We believe it will.
So I'm just doing the numbers really quick of the qualifying students and the monitor students total, with compared to the 50 FTE, that's about a 38 student to teacher ratio. So better than it was.
Much better than it was.
But yeah, so it's high.
It's
Yes.
also better because we've lessened the number of schools that teachers are supporting as well.
Correct.
And we're chasing D2 on this, and so District 2 has been very intentional on these strategies and done incredible work in supporting ELL students. It is a larger set of their population, but we have certainly seen, even from an enrollment answer, minus the Mitchell question, we saw the largest growth in the southeast corridor this year for an enrollment. And many of those students that were coming in were at a higher percentage of ELL than they were in other parts of the city. So it is a growing area of need. We are thankful for the board for the support and for the expertise of the team to be trying to get out in front of that. Many districts that go through decreased enrollment over time just find that the concentration of special populations to serve just continues to increase at an exponential rate.
Yeah, and District 11 is increasingly getting diverse, so it's good that you are there. Director.
Yes, just following up, because same area of questioning. Qualifying students, you said it's 1318, but what was the number being served then? Is it just the monitoring number? It seemed like it was 1,000 something in between.
Yeah, it is 1,318, and that includes those students that are on refusals.
Right.
Parent.
Okay, so overall getting services, is everyone under monitoring, or was there an in-between number?
The in-between number would be the difference between students who are accepting services and refusing services. Accepting students are about 1,282.
1282, thank you, that was the number I'm after.
I think one thing like for the future connected to like Nicole's doing a tremendous job working with schools and helping to support making sure that we get the staffing, and thank you very much for like supporting that. What we have to also remember is we're looking at different ways to help support, and she is as well. Because teachers that are CLDE teachers have to be certified, and they have to go through a program connected to a university. And that's additional cost for some. There's a lot fewer teachers that are endorsed in that way. So that is also what she's supporting and what we're working on.
The endorsement is about a 2-year commitment and a $10,000 at least investment.
Yeah,
It's
so
a
it's a
little
significant amount of commitment by them.
Correct.
I also want to just say, like with the additional staff, that gets us, that we're decreased the number of schools. We've gotten the ratio better, but we've had that number of students, even though it's increasing every year, we've been operating at a deficit in terms of the number of CLDE teachers. That's important. Again, to thank the board for right-sizing that, and as we continue to move forward.
Great, thank you so much. I hope the additional staff that got approved and you can hire, the level of service that we can provide our students is greater, and this leads to improved student outcomes. That's what we are looking at. I know that our special populations, sometimes the level of service that they need and how much we need to lift them up, that they are falling behind. So hopefully this provides the support for them and improves student outcomes. So thank you.
Thank you.
How long have you been in this position?
This is my first year.
This is your first year. Okay, welcome. Are
you.
you from District 11 or did you come?
Yes,
Okay.
since about 2010.
Thank you.
She's killing it.
All right.
Well, thank
Yeah.
Okay, I guess back to you, gifted and talented.
I
Okay.
am up next. So thank you for spending time hearing about the Gifted and Talented Office tonight. Our theme this year was painting the palette of giftedness, where we look at the broad brushstrokes and the fine details and the intensities of our students. Where we provide challenging experiences built on strengths to optimize potential. And our staffing model, we calculated out where we serve the fewest number of students at elementary, where a 1.0 FTE serves 40 kiddos. At middle school, we have 1.0 FTE scaled to serve 70 students on their caseload. And at high school, we serve about 200 students per 1.0 FTE, though the reality is at our larger high schools, we're looking at 250, 270 kids that one person is serving. And so we're able to serve quite a few of our schools in that way. And then our DMP schools, you know, we've got 2 elementaries and 2 middle where we dedicate FTE so that we can serve the core academic areas at each of those schools so that students are getting an integrated thematic experience. Our ESSER funded positions, we've got 5.4 ESSER currently in place and filled, serving 16 elementary, 3 middle, and 1 high school. And I am going to look forward to coming back to this team next year to request that we continue to fund those positions because we have seen great gains in the elementary schools where we were able to put somebody 2 days a week or 2.5 days a week instead of just 1 day a week, because we know our gifted kids are not just gifted on Tuesdays. I am particularly proud of our team for being early adopters on the updated identification model where we use a robust body of evidence of qualitative and quantitative data with the opportunity to use local norms. This has really helped us leverage our processes to identify more students. The dial-in supports that we provide, Mark Hess and I provide the dial-in supports for schools. When they need something, we help them out. You know, we've got 14 areas where we identify gifted students. The academic areas, you can see the numbers here on the screen. What I'd like for you to see is that our talent development numbers are growing, as well as we're moving kiddos from talent development into tier 3. And so we are growing our students into academically gifted kids, which I absolutely adore. What you'll see here is that what you won't see here is that we identified 729 tier 3 students this academic year, which is a huge number of kids, and I'm particularly proud of our team for analyzing the data and taking action. You all know that we're in year 2 of operationalizing our creative identifications along with our talent area identification processes, where you may see 174 kids in tier 3 and 34 in talent development. That seems quite a bit smaller than the other numbers, but when you realize we've only been doing it for 2 years, this is a huge win for our students. And also in the past 6 months, we have worked together, Nicole and I have worked together to identify our multilingual students. We've identified 12 students that are gifted and talented and multilingual in the last 6 months. And in the program that have students who have received services in the multilingual group, we have 114 that are also identified gifted. So you all know that we are committed to demonstrating growth in the area of giftedness, that we really want to foster that, especially in our tier 3 students. We serve the top 15% of every school, and we connect our kids with their talent opportunities. I'd like to take an opportunity to show you the tier 3 math students and their overall growth in math. I believe that the Eureka implementation and the Best First Instruction initiative has really helped our students demonstrate growth in math. I am particularly happy with this data. I realize it's a little bit hard to see from where we're sitting, but seeing the growth in the 60s and the 70s is I'm happy with, especially knowing that we implemented STAR this year as well, and it was all new for all of us. The reading data for our tier 3 students is not really quite as strong as I really want it to be, though we're hovering right around the 50s for most of our grade levels. I would like to see that be stronger for next year, and our gifted team is already working to figure out how can we really demonstrate growth in students that are in 4th grade and reading at a 9th grade reading level. Because that's really what this statistic is showing us is how are we demonstrating a year's growth for students who already know how to do something really well. You all have seen this type of graph before. It's a representational index where we take the percentage of gifted kids divided by the subpopulation and the percentage of the overall district. The thicker bar is this year, the thinner bar is last year. What I'd like to note here is that we are really improving in several of our subpopulations, and we know we still have work to do in others. I'm pleased with the direction we're headed. And this is the forecast. This is the 2nd grade COGAT data where we have 18% of our students that are in very high or above average categories. This is what we use to start thinking, who are we going to be serving for the next 10 years? And so we're right on target for really looking at identifying and serving and programming for the top 15% of each of our schools. We used Best First Instruction as an opportunity to create a professional learning series that we offer to our gifted resource teachers. If you're interested in the slide deck, you're welcome to access it. We provided a flipped classroom model where then we provided videos and then we brought the team together to have conversations about how they're seeing how they best used Best First Instruction in their classes with their gifted kids. I would like to highlight our creativity assessments that we are systematically doing at the middle school level as well as the D11 Talent and Pikes Peak Days. We adjudicate and serve our creative and productive thinkers, our kids in theater, in visual arts, in dance, and in vocal and instrumental music. Next year, we're going to have a tip week where we basically book out the Colorado Springs Youth Symphony and continue the partnership with them and the Children's Chorale and the FAC at CC and Bemis Art. And we have community partnerships, people coming in, or Mayo Dance Studio coming in to help our students really recognize their strengths in their area in the arts. The other thing that I think is important for the board to know is that Laurie Lee McDaniel and I worked very closely on this process, and we presented at our Colorado Gifted and Talented Conference this year and had great feedback from people all around the state who want to take something that we do and do it in their district. Laurie Lee was also invited to present at the Special Education and Gifted Directors meeting just last month, and I think that speaks volumes for the presence that we are building and continuing to have in the state. I know most of you probably know Mark Hess. He's our gifted education specialist. He's the president of the CAGT organization for this next year. And he also recently in the last 2 years has 8 published books to support social emotional needs of gifted, math and literacy in gifted, and also one that's more tailored to adult gifted learners. And I just think it's important to realize the talent that we have on our gifted and talented team. And I just can't let that go unsaid. Like, we have to recognize the talent that we have on our team because we are doing great things for kids.
That's awesome.
You know our priorities. We're gonna take care of kids, make sure they grow academically and serving the needs. And we have excellent parent involvement. We've got a great GTAC committee where we partner on projects and they give us feedback and we respond to it, and it's just this really great conversation that we have every month. Just about every month we have with families. Next year we're rolling out GT Champions to really partner community members with schools, and we're looking forward to seeing how that goes. And just a little postcard to talk about our GT Champions. If you want to help out with our gifted kids, we have a way to help you help out. All right, thank you very much. Does anybody have questions?
Yeah, I'm sure the board will have. Your staffing is good. What I mean is you don't have too many vacancies going into.
We do not have too many vacancies. We only have 2 vacancies that we have currently, and we've been able to work with those where we have a point of contact at that school. That point of contact is very well connected with us to provide dial-in supports. We also, at a different school, have a vacancy that we've been able to meet the needs with an existing gifted resource teacher that goes over and supports that school in conjunction with us to make sure the needs are met.
Thank you. Personally, I'm a big advocate for gifted and talented education in our school district. I think that there is a huge market out there. I've talked previously about my passion to even open a gifted talented school. I know that we have magnet schools, but just a gifted and talented school all by itself, because we see Academy ACL, that's a charter school that's thriving, and there are other gifted and talented schools throughout the community. There is a market for that. The parent engagement in these subpopulation of students is also high. And it directly correlates to parent engagement, translates into student achievement. All of it tracks well together. So thanks for the work that you are doing. Board questions?
I have a brief one. What would you, so looking at the data for our GT students, what would you attribute some of the drop between fall, winter, and fall, spring?
Or reading?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and what are maybe your thoughts? I know we just adopted some curriculum, but maybe it's not the best fit and we need to reassess. I mean, what are...
Yeah, those are
some of your
actually some of the
folks
questions that we're asking with our team and really digging into where do we have holes where do we need to shore up some possibilities, and where do we go from here? So you're asking the right questions because we're asking them too.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I understand we just paid for something, but if it's not working and we need to do something different, then we need to do something different. We're not gonna let kids, keep slipping because we already paid for something if we need to do something different. So I'm all for that. So thank you for asking the questions.
So do gifted and talented students get a little bit more rigor, the tier 3 instruction that you're talking about or whatever? I don't know how the level goes. But if we are using Wonders curriculum for our basic curriculum, do they get more rigorous Wonders curriculum or something?
Depends on the school and it depends on who is the teacher of record. For example, the gifted magnet program schools, they would typically use something that's designed for gifted kids, like College of William and Mary or Tamara Stambach curriculum. We use some of Mark's lessons and units so that our kids really have their academic and social emotional needs met. If a gifted resource teacher is in an intervention role and they're in their school 2.5 days a week, they may not be responsible for the math and reading curriculum, and so that may be up to the classroom teacher to differentiate on that end. And we've got teachers that do a great job of differentiating and providing supplemental materials. We've been purchasing materials like junior grade books that provide high quality literacy instruction and text. And so we use that as a supplement within the gifted classroom. And it really depends on the amount of time that teacher has with those kids to see how much gain we can make with them.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions on that?
I've had the great fortune to interact with several of our gifted families, and sometimes, I should say all the time, it has been complementary to the work that has happened. Sometimes they are asking for more and new introductions, which is great. I was at the, what's the name of the book thing that just happened at Tesla? The Book Champion, where the kids battle the books, thank you very much, and Addie was there. You remember our conversation with Addie? And I believe they came in first again, which Addie is in our gifted magnet program at Sabin. And her and her family have been incredible supporters. And just as we get ready to transition to Judy, I recall very distinctly as I was going through the data from the community feedback for the superintendent search, how many strong supporters there were for our Gifted Talented program. And so I do appreciate the patience of the board on a long day to allow us to get this on the record to celebrate all our special populations. But District 11 is doing incredible things for kids. We got Doogie Housers all over the place, people. So just come walk some of the schools with us and see the incredible learning that's happening in our Gifted Talented programs.
And the great work that, the slides on the talent development, the identification process, talent development work and pull, like that's the, if we don't continue to just as a state overall, as a nation, like identify students better, we can't actually work and program to meet their needs. And so like when Emily talks about the innovative ways and she scratched the surface on some of that, but she's doing incredible work trying to account for different ways that we can identify students, and that talent development pool is a huge part of that, right? You're starting to see what are some talents, even if kids don't have all the markers to fully be identified. And we can start servicing them through that, right? If we start seeing those things, and then when it catches up and we can actually identify them, then they have the mark there that shows it for everything. But that is huge work. So kudos.
Thank you again, and we look forward to when you have to come back to the board for that 5.4 FTEs, which are yearly funded. And usually, I mean, this has happened before. Grant-funded positions get sunsetted, but if you come and demonstrate that this has been a value add to the district in terms of improving student outcomes, in terms of identifying more gifted and talent, in terms of the service that we end up providing, that's a conversation for the board at that time. And see if we can find some additional funding to support what you guys are doing. Good luck in what yeah, good luck in what you're doing. And then I'll finally end with, again, I think there is a market out here. So Superintendent Gall, if at some point in time your team would look into whether we can open a GT school itself, whether it's K through 8, what Academy ACL is doing. I know that we have a charter school that is doing that, but I think there is market here for more than one charter school. And we can attract students from D49, all those students from
I have a team of
surrounding
people
districts.
who would teach them too.
Yeah. The floor is yours.
Off the ESSER funding.
Good evening, board members. I am so pleased to be here despite the lateness of the hour. People who know me well know that I love to talk about special education, and I can do it for a really long time. I will try not to do that tonight. When the time was going to be earlier, my replacement, Deirdre Shearer, was going to be here with me so that I could introduce you. The district picked exactly the right person to replace me. Deirdre is a longtime colleague of mine for about 15 years. We worked directly together back in our Harrison School District days. And then for the last 10 years, we've been close colleagues in the region. And she will come in, it will be a seamless transition, and you'll be so pleased with the work that she does, and she'll take special education to the next level in D11. So
Good to hear.
you have something to look forward to there.
And she's coming from D2?
She's coming from Pikes Peak BOCES most recently. She's been there for the last 10 years. So she's actually been the special ed director for 9 teeny tiny school districts out on the Eastern Plains. You've seen this slide from me before, so I won't go into great detail. We do use a formula by which we allocate our teachers and paraprofessionals out to buildings, and we, in addition to using the formula, we use a mobility factor. We take all kinds of things into consideration, but it's really not just the formula, but because we know that these are real students out in schools, and buildings are highly impacted sometimes by the types of students they get. When you see the average caseload sizes by level, you'll see that the caseload sizes continue to be quite low. In District 11, we do that primarily because we haven't had center-based programming for students. And so students at their neighborhood schools can have any number of disabilities. They might have very high needs, or they might not have high needs. So schools need to be prepared to respond to whatever shows up. I wanted to start with the picture of my leadership team here. This leadership team of 5 women and lots of other people who aren't pictured here are the ones really doing the boots on the ground work in District 11, and you might, give me credit for things that are happening in District 11, but it's not me. It's this team of women and all the other people out there who are doing wonderful work. We increased our numbers over the past year in special education by about 145 students, so we're now over 2,700 students in District 11 special education. On the right side, you can see the numbers of staff that we have to allocate out to buildings. That's about 500 staff. About 400 of those staff members are people who work directly in buildings every single day. The rest of them might not be allocated directly to buildings, but they're spending most of their time in buildings every day. The dial-in supports that we have, we're really hoping to match more closely with what's happening with our area superintendents next year. We're really looking at coordinating the kinds of services that we can get out to schools at a moment's notice. But you'll see every high school has, and their feeder schools has a special education facilitator. We have assessment psychologists, behavior interventionists, and instructional coaches. There are other people who support those clusters, we call them, but we're their areas now. And during the pandemic, in sense, we've had different kinds of students show up in our schools, and we get supports out to buildings pretty quickly, often same-day assistance out to schools that are having high needs. Early childhood education, I'm not the exact best person to talk about that here. Sarah couldn't be here this evening, so I'll do my best. This year alone, we opened 4 new preschool classrooms, as you probably are aware. But you can see that over the last 4 or 5 years, we've really crept up. And now we have a staff total of 142, and we have over 1,400 students receiving preschool services in our district. The as you know, Colorado citizens overwhelmingly approved universal preschool. It's finally here. It's going to be starting this next year after several years of planning. It's going to be available to any child in their year right before kindergarten. This means that all children before kindergarten will be eligible, and this is a change from the past whereby students had to qualify based on a risk assessment. Now any student in their year before kindergarten can come. But we'll still be servicing students in their 2 years. We typically call those 3-year-olds, and they'll be getting services as well. When Mr. Gall said that our preschools are the best in the county, that was partially true. Actually, our preschools are recognized at the state level as being some of the best. Part of the reason for that is that we have early childhood special educators. These are teachers who have master's degrees in both special education and general education. And so students get everything that they need right there in an integrated preschool setting. This graph is just one of the things that shows how well we're doing in special education for in early childhood. We're meeting or beating the state target in social emotional, and I can't read those words up there. Cognitive and self-help skills, and that's a huge celebration for us that we're doing better than the state. When we look at our at all preschool students in the district, you can see that that we're beating the state. Well, no, let me see. Our students demonstrated overwhelming growth from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So if you look at that first, okay, turn around and look. Students who met in literacy at the beginning of the year met or exceeded were at 48% and now at 91%, and that looks really similar for math.
Yeah, I mean, look at the end there in literacy, 91.25% when they're leaving, right? Like, and then in math, 87.35. Again, to the point of closing the gap before it starts, opening up more opportunity for that is huge. I'll just say really quickly, in connection to Sarah, that the idea is, and we were talking about this just the other day, connected to also from our superintendent, that we're going to make even more of an intentional connection between those preschool programs and what's happening there and then what's happening in kindergarten. Part of that will be the Jump Start initiative that we have to start off, particularly in those schools that have preschool programs currently, and those kids will be matriculating into kindergarten.
You just go back one slide, because I just want to not ignore the social emotional competencies and the self-help numbers. We have often talked internal as a team that our goal is never on any academic scoring for a pre-K environment. It is children being acclimated to a learning environment such that our high-quality kindergarten can also then grab them. We start in a deficit that so many of our kids come in with some form of either trauma-informed instruction requirement or social-emotional deficit that we are playing catch-up from the first day of kindergarten. Exposure to high-quality pre-K is a nationally proven research practice that will have stronger matriculation and success over the years. So those numbers right there show you that D11 has been at the forefront of it, and we have identified this as an incredible growth opportunity for the district and long-term academic achievement opportunity as well.
On that slide, I'm sorry, I missed it. Is this, no, the next one that you just, is that growth or what is that measuring?
It's a meet or exceeds.
So
Again,
percent of the kids are?
Yes.
Target, yes, percentage of
So by
students.
the end of by the end of the year, 91% of the kids in our pre-K setting met or exceeded expectations, 87.3.
That was our fall data on the left, our spring data on the right, and we use the TS Gold assessment. Specifically, it's the state assessment, but that's the assessment we use in preschool.
And so they're not
That's
coming
5
in above
domains.
expectations. It's the high quality nature of their experience.
Doing pretty good. Yeah, it's really good.
I talk to you every year about our transition program. It's really important to me. It's a passion area for me because of its tremendous impact for students right before they leave us and go out into the adult world. I'm very excited this year to be able to say that we have moved into new and better space. We have a couple of classrooms at the Lawson campus. We have a couple of classrooms at the Galileo campus. And we've recently purchased an activity bus using ESSER funds. So that's meaningful because it offers a kind of flexibility that we haven't had for our transition students to get them out into the community as a group. We've had to rely on metro mobility or parents driving their students around, and this really just enables us to be a one-stop shop. We're making plans right now to have workshops open at Galileo for bicycle repair, sewing, floral, all kinds of exciting opportunities there that keep our students engaged. We're making better use of community facilities that are state-of-the-art, like the kitchen at the Arc and other places as well. We're expanding our catering events. I know our transition students have catered at least one board meeting this year. They cater all of our SEAC events every year, and they do a phenomenal job. And then we just have continued partnerships in District 11, especially with CTE, Dwayne Roberson over there. I got to give him a shout out. He really is one of the departments that reaches out to us on a regular basis to ask how they can help us in special education. That's a huge thing. And then my story always about transition is that IEP meetings that I used to go to for students in kindergarten where parents maybe wanted to hold their high needs student back in first grade. And I said, but you're gonna miss this opportunity at the other end of your student's career where they get exactly what they need to go out and be independent. Another year in first grade is not gonna do that. But all the job skills that we can give your child are going to be helpful. So I'm hoping that this program continues to grow over the years.
If you go back, those students in the middle were right here serving the board.
Yes,
I think 2 or 3 months back.
That's
when
right.
They served the.
As well as the gift that I gave every board member were the little bags made by the transition program.
That's right.
Who ate the chocolate?
Sure.
Good job.
Go ahead.
So you mentioned the slide is from last night. So sewing, we know about sewing. I'm curious a little bit about bike repair, where that might be happening, and floral. I love flowers, so I'm like, oh, what's happening with floral? Where do I go with my arrangement? Did they do the ones on the tables last night?
They did not do the ones on the tables.
All right, well, I'm
No,
sure they'll
no.
be just as good or better. But so what are those programs happening?
The workshops that we're looking at are not yet up and running.
Okay.
They're kind of gearing up for the bike repair first, although they've done some of the sewing and embroidery too, but that's been a smaller operation. Those workshops will be out of the Galileo campus. And we have 2 classrooms really right at the end where our students can enter and really not interfere with middle school operations there. They're gathering machines. I think, a bunch of us have bicycles in our garage that we're gonna donate when they're ready to get up and going. They have partnerships in the community with bicycle shops.
Great. Can they get the again at Galileo?
That
We're
was
doing
a
floral.
question of mine,
Yeah.
and yes, I hope so. I
Yeah.
think there's a problem with the greenhouse
It's gone.
there that's gone, so we'll see. We'll see about that, yeah. And then the most exciting news that I get to share every year, I know last year I stood in front of you and I said, I don't know exactly how we got to 89.86% of our students on IEPs graduating. I wasn't sure we were gonna do better. Look at how much better we did. So there's still a few percentage points to get better, and I credit all kinds of things. I think our collaboration with CTE is part of it. But also students on IEPs typically didn't have an easy path to graduation. But when the new graduation changes happened a few years back, we really got on the ball and we developed a performance assessment that created a pathway that would demonstrate ELA and math competency for our students. And it's through the self-directed IEP process. So students, the minute they get into 9th grade, they're working on their self-directed IEPs. It builds so much self-advocacy skills and so all the other kinds of skills that students need to make them independent adults. And I think it keeps students engaged because they not only know their strengths, they know their areas of need, they know what they need to ask for, and they're pretty excited about their learning as a result.
So are those 4-year graduation rates?
These are all students who are graduating, so some of them will be students who are in transition, although now we're able to count students who are in transition as they exit high school and enter transition. So this is probably just our students now who are graduating in 4 years. Yeah. So the trend is what's most important to me, right? We're trending in the right direction. We're also trending in the right direction continuously with our dropout rates. I was excited last year to share with you that we were under 8%, and this year we're under 3% of our students dropping out. So we're keeping kids in school and we're graduating them. Post-school outcomes. I'd like to share with you that it's one of the areas where the state grades us. 1 year out, we are required to call every student on an IEP who's exited our system and find out, are they doing higher education? Are they in competitive employment? Are they in some sort of training program? And so we are not quite meeting the state standard, state target in any of those areas, but if you look down at 14C, which kind of includes all of those things, we're getting pretty close, and I'm pleased that we're at 75.38% of our students who have exited are doing something meaningful with their lives after they leave us. This is, let's see. This is up from 66% in 2019. This is the first time since the beginning of the pandemic that we've gotten numbers in this area. The state kind of took a pass on all of these things for us for a few years. So we're up from 66% 4 years ago, and I'm interested to see where we'll go next year.
If I may.
Sure.
14A, I remember, teaching and hey, we want everybody to go higher ed. And where we're at now, just needing so many people in other capacities, the metric for the state target for 14A, I could care less about. I'm glad for the bottom one that we are getting our students that had IEPs through high school into just success of whatever they're suited for and whatever they want to pursue. So that's great.
I agree with you. Least restrictive environment. This is an area that we're continuing to make progress, and the trend line looks good. We're at the state target, so that's fine. This is an area, it's another passion area of mine, and I hope that we can improve on this in the coming years. I think we will. Significant disproportionality is another thing I report to you every year. This includes whether or not our school district is disproportionately representing students by race or ethnicity in the following areas. Do we over-identify students for special education, especially in specific disability categories? Do we place students in particular settings? Or do we have a higher rate of suspensions and expulsions? We don't in District 11, and we never have in the 6 years that the state has been monitoring this. And in fact, I know we had an equity audit done a couple of years ago, and they were surprised that not only did we not have significant disproportionality, we really don't have disproportionality at all in special education.
That is huge.
That is huge, and it's unusual for a district our size.
That's great.
Some of the slides I've just shown you are really breakouts of our overall AU determination, which includes compliance and results. Compliance is made up of things like, well, significant disproportionality is in there, but it's things like, do we do our evaluations on time? Do we write legally defensible IEPs? Do we submit our data on time? If school districts aren't getting 100% on that, they need to work harder. We get 100% on that every year. The results matrix is a combination of our participation in state assessments, our growth and achievement, our graduation and dropout rates, and our post-school outcomes. And so we met the state target on that this year. It's not as high as we'd like for it to be. Our graduation and dropout rates really show us well on that. We got a pass on our growth rates on state assessments. There wasn't good data to create growth because of the pandemic. This was the first year really the state has been showing us our state assessment results. So we got a pass on that. But the slide I am hesitant to show you, but I will anyway, is our, that you've seen already, is our performance. we're really lagging behind the state target and state performance on this. I think it's indicative of what's happening across the district. We expect students on IEPs not to do as well as other students in the district, but we certainly want to meet the state target. So we have some work to do there, and I suspect that the commitment the district has made to Best First Instruction is going to be what gets us there. I'm really excited. I was so thrilled. Just the words Best First Instruction speak to my special education heart, because I know that that's the way we'll get students there. I said, show me the research on Best First Instruction with regard to special education, and it exists. What we know is that students who are lagging behind do much better in a Best First Instruction model with getting the differentiation they need right there in that setting. And there's lots of research to show it. When I think we've all shown you this triangle now, and the thing about that is that these are things we're already doing in special education, right? When we look at purposeful planning for learning, IEP already requires a purposeful plan. We're doing that. We're already working hard to keep learning engaging for students for whom learning is hard. We know it's critical for students on IEPs to do the same rigorous material, to be presented with the same rigorous material that all other students are receiving. And in special education, what we like to do is pull students out and do something different with them. We know that's not the right thing to do. We need to get everybody on board with that, and Best First Instruction is our way in. The new thing to talk about this year, the brand new thing to talk about, is that we'll be building back into the district next year what used to be called center-based programming. We're staying away from that terminology because it's heavily loaded. People think of segregated classrooms and students who don't get to spend time with their typical peers. So we've intentionally named them inclusion support programs, which means the intention will be for students to be placed in a program, but as quickly as they can, they're going to be flooded in with their typical peers and get back to a level that they can be back in their typical school. Next year, we'll be starting with 2 classrooms at the elementary level. They're designed for students with autism. We're starting with elementary only, and we'll probably stay there with our programs, mainly because our middle schools and high schools already have the infrastructure and the staff that they need to operate their own programs. So we'll be continuing to work with them and tweak their programming, but it's really lacking at the elementary level, where some schools might have 1 or 2 students who have extremely high needs, and up until now, the only thing we could do with them is place them outside of our school district. It's the wrong decision when we just were missing a program in our district. So next year we'll have 20 slots available to run these programs. We started to build the infrastructure first. Oh, am I? Sorry. Yeah. I'll put that down. We built the infrastructure, so we have 3 inclusion support staff people who will be helping get students into these programs and back out of the programs. They'll also be supporting schools that maybe don't have a program but have high needs students that they know they need to support. Year 2, we'll look to build in 2 affective needs programs. So these are students with high behavior needs who are on IEPs. Year 3, we'll look to add 1 more of each of those programs. That might be all we need. 3 affective needs programs and 3 autism programs, but it will be somebody else's decision at that time about what's necessary moving forward. We're very excited about it. We think we've got what we need in place. And then just finally, I want to talk about the kids on the screen here, because Mitchell High School students and staff won the Allies in Inclusion Award at the State Parent Center Conference last month. They made an hour-long presentation at this conference, and they were wonderful. If you've not seen these students present, they do it multiple times a year, and I challenge you to go out and watch them. They are just living what student-led IEPs are all about, and they were so excited to celebrate their award. The things that we're working on are no different than what we've been working on before, except that part of what we're focusing on is staff retention. Sometimes we can get staff in the door, but we can't keep them. So what can we do to keep them? Mentoring and support is one way. Beefing up our professional development, which we've already started this year, and through September of 2024, we're using our ESSER funds to reimburse staff for classes they take that benefit special education. So we've got some staff working on master's degrees in various areas. Some are just going to conferences to get better at things, but we can reimburse them for those things. And then all the other things I think I've already talked to you about. Parent participation is a huge part of special education, it always has been. But if you've been to any of our Special Ed Advisory Council evening events, you've seen what a mighty group that is, and it's parent-led. It's unusual to have a parent-led group. They're friends with us, and they give us the important things to work on, and we work on them together. So we're so pleased to have active
Awesome.
parents and great things happening in our special education department.
Thank you. And same thing to you. Before you get there, this was the salary schedule for our ESP group that came out today, and it's been shared. Our paraprofessionals, special ed, ELL, early childhood, who were making initially $14.50, starting at $14.50, are now going to move up to $17.22. So that's almost $2.75. The numbers say 18.76% pay raise for them. I know that our paraprofessionals, especially our SPED paraprofessionals, they do yeoman's work out there, and some of the most challenging kids that they have to deal with. But the personal relationships they build with these children, it's a passion for them. You can see that it's a passion and a commitment. They can easily go outside and make a better income, but they are committed, and I'm glad that through this salary schedule we can.
Thank you. I hadn't heard that number, and it was Phoebe Bailey who asked me last year, what do we need to get our SPED paras to? And I wrote down $17 an hour. So look, you got that.
Well, it's $17.22.
That's wonderful. Read that. Wonderful.
Yep.
That will help our hiring so much.
So where are you, again, the vacancies? Do you have vacancies with you?
Yes, we have many vacancies.
It is our highest percentage still of the 106 that we reported last week of certified staff. Over 40 were special ed.
Yes, yes. And our SSP groups are especially hard to hire. I think we have 11 schools next year that might open without a mental health provider. We're working hard to do that, but sometimes these positions stay open with no applicants. Speech is also another really hard area to fill. All of them are, but those are particularly hard areas to fill.
What was SSP?
Special service providers, so there are social workers, psychologists, speech pathologists, OTs, PTs, all of those groups who provide itinerant services.
$12,000 stipend
Yeah.
from D20.
Yeah, we can't compete. We have a hard time competing with other school districts.
And or what they could do in the private, yeah.
Well, which is why you came with a contract
That's right.
for the board to approve.
But
The
there are
truth
still
is-
vacancies
Yep.
even with those contracts.
The truth is, we end up spending the money anyway because the contracts are so expensive, or we have to provide compensatory services later to students who don't get the services. We've had several state complaints or due process complaints based on lack of services, so it gets expensive.
Okay, any further questions? And thank you for your service too. I know you're retiring in a month or so. Hope, wish you a happy and healthy retirement, and hope you get to spend time with your family, and you don't have to worry about staying late for a board meeting and board reports.
You golf much?
Not yet.
Any further questions to? Okay, thank you. Yeah, one other thing I hope that we can address, and it's come several times, is dyslexia students that are diagnosed. That's a big segment of the population too. So I know that we have
We've already rolled out that
Yep.
program.
program.
And we'll send a link to the board. It's on our website as well, so.
Yep.
And that was one of my KRDO Dan Cassell radio hours, so we can say a link to that as well.
Okay.
To the point, like each one of our special populations, like in focusing on best first instruction, they don't stop having that identified need throughout the entire course of their day, right? We talked about mild moderate teachers, we talked about gifted itinerant teachers, we talked about CLDE teachers, but we will need to continue to do even more with our general educators for how are they planning for instruction during the overall day. And that includes how we plan for our dyslexic students during the general overall day as well.
Okay, thank you for your team, thank you for hanging in there and making this presentation. So it's up to Superintendent Gall whether they can be dismissed or.
My team, except Mr. X,
Thank you for.
would go on before the witch hunt. So I appreciate
And
it.
as usual, we save the best for last.
He's always last. Well, I asked about,
Dr.
you're always
X.
last.
So we just have one more item on the agenda, so hopefully we can move through this really fast, which is the policy discussion. So if you can pull up the clean version of AKB first, that was posted on board docs.
Oh, boy.
It's not gonna work how I thought it was gonna work.
So just to give some context while Melissa is pulling that up, AKB is our parent partnership policy. We discussed this last week as a non-action item. Board members had some thoughts, revisions, feedback, and an email went out from me earlier in the week. I forget when it was now. The days kind of blend in at this point in time. So I asked board members to give some feedback with revisions. I think Director Hart provided some feedback and Director Nelson also provided some feedback out there. So the clean version that is out there is with all the feedback that came from the policy committee, from the superintendent and his team, and also from legal. And then we are at that, and any revisions that come from the board, and then it can come for formal board adoption at a later point in time. Dr. X, you have anything to add on to it?
No, the clean version also includes just a few comments that were made at the board meeting last week. We did put in. It's in the red line, part where it was safe and positive learning environment. Under the second numbered section, number 4, that was put in there, just based on language from the meeting, but that's all. Nothing else has changed from what has gone out.
Okay, if you can first pull out the clean version that's on board docs. Okay, AKB. Okay, this is the parent partnership policy, and all the changes that Jason suggested, you only suggested one change, that has been put in there. So that's good to go, okay? That's the basis from which we are starting. And then if you can pick either one of them, the one that came from Director Art, or one that came from Lauren, Director Nelson, AKB.
This one?
Yes.
Director Nelson's came out first, so that might be.
Is this your version or Director Nelson's version? Is that's hers? Okay, could you pull Director Nelson's version? It's not out there. It'll be in a separate email that I sent you. Yeah, that one. Okay, that's Director Nelson's version.
If you click open in Word, you'll see the red lines. For some reason in Outlook, it doesn't show.
Might be best to toggle between them in Word anyway versus on the web browser.
Okay, maybe we can just go back to what was there, I don't know what's
I
going
can
on.
just speak to it.
Okay, if you just go back to the, yeah. Was it the other one that is already open? Okay. There you go.
So added the sentence.
If you can just make it a little bit bigger and larger. There you go.
Added the sentence of the first sentence now saying seeks to deliver an exceptional educational experience to every student, centered on academic excellence, just prioritizing the academics. So that's different, and then I think the next biggest thing is, yeah, the bullets, adding the voice, choice, respect.
I liked that.
So adding one word to each
Yeah.
one of those things.
I thought that was nice.
Okay, I think you carried that over to the next one too.
Yeah, in the next section. I did some things like, where it would say children, just correcting it to be child, so it's consistent throughout because we were toggling between both, and so just
Child, children,
making a
students.
child throughout. And then at the very bottom, the last paragraph, legal had deleted a sentence because they were just concerned about that it would set us up for liability or whatever. So just worked to reword it in a way that that would sit well with them.
Okay. And just to, as a reminder, that last paragraph is the same paragraph that's there at the bottom of the equity policy that was pulled in there, other than instead of commitment to equity, commitment to parent partnership. So it's language that's already there in current policy.
Yeah, I guess they didn't send it to legal.
The equity policy.
I don't, or they just didn't catch it back then, I don't know, but
Okay,
those I think are the main changes.
okay, any thoughts, feedback on this? Any concerns on what Director Nelson posted? And then I can quickly, if there isn't, if we got a thumbs up on this, then this becomes our base policy, and then we can go to what Director Art put into place. Go ahead.
Yeah, the reason you're gonna see my language is because some of this is, it has goals in the front end and goals in the back end, and so it's got a repetitive nature there. And grammatically, one other thing just to be aware of, the second list that's enumerated, the board and the district encourage parents to exercise. In the earlier section, it works, that the board and districts seek to provide, we can seek to provide all of those things, and it sounds good. We seek to provide transparency, engagement, objectivity. But now we're encouraging parents to exercise attendance, exercise voice, exercise choice, those work. Exercise respect is a little iffy. Exercise engaged doesn't work. So the words, or the verb needs to change at a minimum, or the words. But I think you're gonna be happier to change the verb up there, exercise.
Do you have a suggestion of what to change it to? I know that
We'll
was,
we'll give that to you, Dr. X. If you can, Melissa, if you can just pull it a little bit further up. Start right there. So the bottom line is the board and district encourage parents to exercise, maybe a different word other than exercise, okay, before it comes as an action item. Okay.
I struggled with that too, and I was like, but the key thing in number 6 is attendance. So it was just kind of like, well, maybe it's not ideal, but it gets the point across.
Something, if you can work on that language. So, Director Art, you talked about the flow, some of it is repetitive or up and down. But as far as the items go that are on the top, the board and the seek to provide. Are we on consensus on that? There is nothing to change in that? And then we can move to the next 7, and then we can worry about the language on the top and the language at the bottom later.
So on these, I think I
How about
touched.
engage, the website?
Well, engage is number 4 below.
Okay, we'll come to that, but let's just talk about these 7 quickly. What does it, Director?
So first, I wanna go back to the fact, we have a policy that is about parent engagement. And it's KB. And I noticed you called this AKB. I thought that was clever, because KB is kind of like what we already have, but this goes into the other section. I understand that. Or maybe you did that, I don't know. And the other policy, as I understand it, so this is just kind of a more global concern. The other policy is descriptive, it's meaty, it has a background, from what I understand, more oriented towards standards in a family engagement toolkit. And so given that we have D11 Engage and we have that partnership with DAC and D11 Engage and families, it almost feels like we should just take the whole thing and or KB and say, how can we make that better? It is time for that one to be reviewed. It's been 4 years-ish. And I know you put so much work into this, because even doing the rewrite that I did for the first section, it's like, this is so much work. But we're reinventing the wheel, is what I'm afraid of. If that's what the board wants to do, like I said, it's another tool in the kit, but it's the language, the front end language is already out there. And I copied that in the email to the board from the policy KB. It's like, we are really just rewriting some of this with different words. So, that said, the other.
Well, let's, I think Director Nelson had a
Okay,
response to that.
Well, I'd like to respond.
Director Nelson.
So I hear you, it is going to overlap some because they're talking about the same thing, parent engagement on KB and partnering parents. This is now going to be fundamental to District 11. By having it in that, what's it called, the A series, foundations and
Basic commitments or something.
yeah, something like that. So it's when a parent, if they ever go look at policies, what is foundational to District 11? Parent partnership. And so I think it's important that we keep it, because a parent doesn't know to go look in the K series to
They don't
find
know
out
what
what.
anything.
I mean, who knows if people look at policies, probably not. But the point is that for us as a board, and we govern and guide operations, this policy is now going to be what guides us. And if it's just KB, it doesn't do that.
I'd rather move KB over.
Well,
honestly.
I think that KB, like you said, there's a lot of meat to it, which is good. And so I think it's better to have this more of a high level, 30,000 foot view of then KB provides the meat or the detail. And so by having this be more that high level, it's here are the basic things, the fundamental things, maybe some of the key things that parents really want to know. And then if they want to dig deeper, they can go to KB or go to the other reference policies that have more of that detail.
Did you start with anything in particular? Because I know, like I mentioned, the KB is based on a toolkit. It's based on PTA, even I think has some PTA background to it. So it's researched, it's got some experts sticking their opinions in about the connections. And so I was curious what your starting point was.
So I started with KB because where are we at right now? And then I looked at what DAC and D11 Engage brought because they did bring KB with some recommendations of changes. And then I looked to other school districts to see what their parent policies, KB series, or foundational parent policies spoke to. I also referred to what is it called, that Velvet Stefanik just briefed us on?
Family
Yeah,
partnership
her, like,
collaborative.
went back and looked at some of her presentations and pulled some of the language from, like I remember the first and most important teacher was a quote that I wrote down during one of her presentations that I liked. So yeah, I mean, and it went through, policy committee. I kind of, realizing it was their last meeting of the year, just kicked it over to them. So.
Dr. Loma, you also.
Well, I like the ideal, because the average parent is not gonna know how to manipulate or traverse this big giant encyclopedia we call board policy. It's a beast that needs to be destroyed, in my opinion, and rewritten or just tossed out and start fresh. Well, since we can't do that, but by delineating like this, it allows a parent, I mean, just like our Board of Education priorities, you look at it, it's very plain, it's clear and concise, and it doesn't take a PhD to understand it. And so that's the beauty of the way you set it up. It's just clear, concise. It doesn't take all day to try to figure out what it means. If they feel offended by anything, can they look at their parents' our promise, and can they find where they feel they need to, the promise was broken, if you will. You know what I mean? So they look at that, they see it, and if there is an issue, then it can relate to other areas in policy that.
And it's cross-referenced at the end of it,
so
all the other policies.
So I think it's a great ideal, and it'll help quantify and qualify our promise to the parent, and hopefully, which we're trying to do, I think, is build trust again, build that trust that was lost during the pandemic.
And get them to partner with us, like that engagement piece, because that's how this kind of came about, was that work session where the 5E data showed we have a serious parent engagement problem. And so how do we ask them to join us, and like what are the key areas that they can help in? So.
Director Jurgens.
Similar sentiments, basically just saying this is a piece that gives an overview, and then for parents who are looking at foundational pieces, then to go, okay, well, and they might be looking at, hey, might be the first time diving into policy, and then they might go, okay, I want to, involve parents in decisions regarding the overall well-being and healthcare, and they might go, I feel like I don't have that, and they might go down to the cross references, and look at, what, find keywords that align with that, engagement and education, and then maybe I go to policy KB, or maybe I go to, KBE, so I think even for the sake of just saying it's something understandable that then says it's a launching point into maybe some specific policies that parents could, if they wanted to and if they actually did, go in and go, okay, here is policy that I can communicate with my admin or with my, child's teacher or whatever it might be, just to give them the avenue and the equipping of information. So I see it as just an umbrella, and then we can hang things off of it as far as, these little cross-references of things where they might want to go take more time to look at.
Okay, so to keep the conversation moving, I am hearing from the board, and it seems like most of the board members that I have spoken up at this time, a majority of the board would like to see an foundation fundamental policy under AKB. So with that being said, now, is there any revision at all for this 1 to 7 that the board is interested in, or are you good with the 1 to 7 that's on this? Director Loma?
I like the 1 to 7.
Okay. Director Nelson, you were the one that suggested. I'm good with it. Director Jurgensen, you're good with it.
Yep.
Director Art, I'll come to you first.
All right,
1
I
to
have
7.
Go back to my own, because I didn't translate mine necessarily over to Director Nelson's. The first 1 through 7, I started to say this and then I got sidetracked by the global look at KB. So items 5 through 7, I think that they could be considered vague. Well, they're not vague, but they sort of spell out particulars that I think people can argue. What was complete? What was unbiased? What's clear information? Overall well-being. And number 7 too, impartial. We had that conversation last time. Free of ideological and political advocacy. We are in a place in society where people call things ideological or political that other people don't see them that way. And at least on 5 and 7, the language with state and federal law and board policy, I think that gives some protection there. And makes it easier to define for like the superintendent. If somebody comes to us and says the board didn't do this, well, also we have legal protection looking out for us. They came back and said, no, go seek to. So that's some comfort. So I just want to say I do have some concerns in general about those, but the fact that it's been changed to seek to does give, and that legal is okay with this, I think that's important to note.
Yeah, we ran it by legal. And the legal made some of the changes that they already did to this policy. So we are, did you suggest any revisions in the version that
Not
comes?
to that, but in the next section I did, the board.
So the 1 to 7, first of all, the board and the district seek to provide. I'm just looking for a consensus to move on. If there is, you said like 5 to 7 is vague. Is that something the rest of the board feels concerned about? I haven't heard from
We
that.
already said we're good with that.
Okay, we are good with that. Director Daniels, you have any thoughts or this? Are you good with the language out there?
Sure.
Okay, Director Daniels is good. So with that being the case, is Director Bankett still with us? No, she left. Okay, she said that she wants to get ready for tomorrow's graduation. She's the speaker out there, so she wants to get tomorrow morning.
Opportunity Academy graduation is tomorrow.
So if that is the case, if, and since no revisions are now on the table, the board is, the majority, the will of the board that I see is that they don't want any revisions to 1 to 7. So, and the same thing for the following 1 to 7. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, so number 3, it could be more clear, encourage their child to be actively engaged in the classroom and to own the child's academic success. So who is supposed to be owning the child's success, the parents or the child?
This is about the parents. This is asking the parents to do
We're
it.
encouraging the parents to encourage their child to be actively engaged in the classroom. Are we encouraging parents to own the child's academic success?
Yeah.
Or are we encouraging the parents to encourage their child to own the child's academic success?
Yes. We're up above the board and district, encourage parents to encourage their child to be actively engaged in the classroom and to own it.
They're encouraging their child.
We want the parents to have their kids own their academic success.
It probably works either way, but if you're.
That's grammatically correct.
It can be read 2 different
It's
ways.
speaking about the child.
Kim,
All right, that's fine.
anything further in the rest of the list?
Not in the list, no.
Okay, so, and then with the top part and the bottom part, Director Art made some revisions. Director Nelson, you have a version. What I'm going to suggest is, Dr. X, if you can see a way where, if you can move it to the very top, I'm talking about, up there. And those.
Can I just make we all had a chance to look at the revisions, so personally, I'm good with mine. I appreciate the recommendations that you suggested. I tried before we got here to merge them, but I feel like it's just kind of like you move one sentence here and another here and it's still saying the same
rehashed it,
thing.
why are we rehashing it again? We just gotta move forward.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
and I know you deleted some things that I would prefer we keep, so if you were
Okay.
about to ask Dr. X to merge
No,
them?
I was just going to
don't-
say, if you, both of you want to work with Dr. X before it comes as an action item to some kind of agreement as to what, because you are the one behind the thing, both of you work with Dr. X to see how that language flows.
But what if they don't agree?
Yeah, that's,
And I don't know.
What
if
she's saying
the
right now,
board-
she said she likes what it is,
Yeah,
why,
fine.
we should just take it and move forward.
I mean,
agreed.
if the other board members wanna weigh in on Director Otts or mine and say, no, I don't like that, or
Okay.
I like that.
So has the board looked at both versions?
Tried to as much as I could, and then like Director Nelson mentioned, you're looking at so many variations that you're
Yeah.
just like,
You can
oh
beat
my
it forever.
goodness. And I couldn't even imagine trying to blend two different people's edits. So
So Director, go ahead.
The issue, part of the issue for me is there's, there's things, yes, I deleted, like, I tried to use the overall values, what seems to be the values that you've placed here. I took out things that seemed a little extra, like that we agree with the Supreme Court. That just didn't seem necessary. If you want, maybe we could reference it down at the bottom. But I guess it is referenced, never mind. So it seemed extra, it didn't, if we're trying to make it easy to read for parents, I don't think it needs to go in there. The goal of the document is listed at the front end. It is the goal of this document to build and enhance the working relationship, and that goes on. And then at the end, it is the goal of the document. Or the enumerated list of goals is not exhaustive. And so the goals here, the goals there, and it just felt like you could tighten up that language. So that's why I wrote
Okay.
some of it.
So is that something that we can charge Dr. X to do, or is that something you, or if the board is collective to move on, then we can?
She's saying you're right to use the word goal twice.
No,
I get what Director Ott's saying at the
there's
bottom.
some repetition in here, and
If you
this
change
enumerated
intent,
list of
goal to
goals.
intent, does it feel better? It's still doing the same thing.
That's what I'm asking. Instead of us trying to wordsmith out here, what we agreed on right now is that 7 bullet points on the top and the 7 bullet points on the bottom. That's good as it is. Working on some other language on the top and the bottom to tighten it, is that something that Director Nelson and Director Ott, do you want to work with Dr. X behind the scene before this comes as an action item in front of the board, the next board meeting? You can work on coming to a consensus. If you don't come to an agreement on it, then just bring the 2 languages out there if you want to, and then the board can figure out which language to adopt, or you can send a version, the final version of each one of them. Is that something?
I mean, I'm gonna pose that question to the rest of the board.
Okay.
If you guys want us to do that, I will, but like, I've
I don't.
already stated where I'm
But
at, so,
do you feel a necessity to tighten the language, like what Director Ott said? No?
no.
Okay.
I would be willing to work with Director Nelson and Dr. X to try to.
I don't think it's
improve the language.
necessary. It's just gonna get carried on.
If you all, agree with her point, then I'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the context is not going to change. It is combining a couple of sentences. It is moving things some to the front, some to the back. That's what we are talking about out there. But if the board is comfortable where it is at, we can leave it where it is at. And since you were the primary author of this policy, we will defer to you as the final choice if the board is not comfortable.
Well,
Director Jurgensen.
Yeah, even just looking at the bottom part where, Director Ott's, some of it, cleans up and makes it more concise, but then I go back and look through the red line, of redlining, the board recognizes the hard work and dedication of district staff as well as the fundamental need for parent trust and engagement in pursuit of the shared goal. Like, I think those are might be seen as platitudes, but I don't see them as platitudes, and I'm not inferring that you do, Director Ott. I like them in there, and even if it makes it, another paragraph longer, I think just reinforcing that, hey, this whole thing is a collaboration of, hard work and dedication of staff, and then parent trust and engagement for the mutual benefit of the student that they're both, working with. So
Okay,
I see it as being fine.
okay. I get two board members and Director Daniel said was okay with what was in there, or you've got any thoughts?
Go back and work on it.
Okay, go back and work on it. That's one thought. I'm comfortable, if you guys have time, you can collaborate together, but I'm comfortable where it is at.
Well, you have four.
Yeah. So are you comfortable where it is
I
at?
already said.
Okay, well then let's move on. So the only change is that exercise, can we work on a different verb? Okay, up there.
I don't know, or if it's changing attendance, like that word.
It's more than attendance,
Sweat,
so.
exercise, but sweat.
Or is it we just have to be like, yeah, okay, it's not perfect, but it gets the point across. So you can work on it and let us know if you think of something better.
Okay, the last policy, let's move that out. The last policy that's on that is the student staff contact policy. Okay, you would have to go back first, pull the version on board docs. Yes, GBEB, clean. Okay, staff contact and professional responsibilities. This is just the policy itself. Was there any major revisions in this policy? I don't think you suggested anything or anybody else. I think Director Art did. So if you can go back to my email and pull Director Art's version. Yes. And
So I can start speaking to it if
Yeah.
that's all right. All right, so the first thing you'll see is on number 3,
right there, yeah, GBEB, yeah, right there.
there's a section, to this end, the district staff will, and number 3 is communicate with parents and guardians to support the education of their student, could just say the students? No, they're.
Is this, most of the revisions that you have suggested, are they just grammatical?
No, I think that
Okay.
people will wanna know the rest of number 3.
Okay.
I would end that at student.
Could you pull it down? Melissa?
Right now, it says as enumerated in the district's parent
Little
partnership
bit more,
principles.
yep.
Number 3.
And we don't normally, that would be unusual to specify something like that. If we want to be consistent, it's not necessary there. If we do list it there, we could reference other policies directly, like KB, KBA, and in some of the other bullets, we might reference student rights to privacy, use of confidential information. So I think it's easier to just take it out and list it at the end as a reference.
Since it's principles though, it's not like I think one of the as I saw was just as, enumerated or as described in district policy. And my thought was we do that in some places, but then we also, we reference principles in other policies. And so I think
So
that
should that read policy instead or district
I don't think
partnership
it should be
policy?
policy. I think it should be principles because we talked about 7 principles in policy AKB, and then you could still reference it to Director Ott's point. But I think that, to Director Nelson's earlier point, if AKB and the parent partnership principles are gonna be our guiding thing in an A series, we could reference the principles and I would be fine leaving them in there. And then
I found this on
the web. I hate that she does that. She's so silly. Always listening, right? I think leaving the principles there
Yeah,
is
me
helpful.
too. That's perfect. I think it's perfect segue to what we're trying to do. It just fits what we're trying to do.
Okay. Director Nelson, you have any
Yeah,
thoughts?
I'm good with leaving it.
Okay, so let's move on then. Director Daniels, you have any thoughts on that? You're good. So let's move on, keep it as it is, further moving down.
under the child abuse section, are we combining policies?
We are not. This policy, we went largely when it was first created, we went from really just blank paper, went to CASB, got their recommendation for what they felt should be in a staff conduct and responsibilities policy, and since it is a responsibility for reporting, they do mention that there. They do block that in there, and then we added a more in-depth policy again in Series J that goes to also regulation for that. We do have some duplication, but not a fully duplicated policy.
Okay. I guess we're all about making more policy. All right, then cross-references, it might be just my computer, but the formatting looked like it needed some work. And I wondered if we should add the master agreement as a cross-reference. And I also added 3 other policies, which would be student records and release of information, student data privacy, which is JRA, JRC, KB, and KBA.
Okay, could we capture that cross-reference at the bottom, that's all?
Do we reference the master agreement in other policies at all?
We do.
And then if we do that, we should do the meet and confer handbook.
Yeah,
Not
that'd be
meet and
very
confer, the other employee handbooks. I mean, if we are going to add those, you have to do all of them. I'm not sure if we should.
Well, if it's staff conduct, then I can see referencing all of them.
There may be something out there, I don't know.
Whether the
Okay,
ASP staff or
do you
exec
need
personnel.
to? If it's already enumerated in policy, why, do you wanna put it in the master agreement?
We're not putting this in the master agreement, we're referencing it at the
So
bottom.
if you go to the very
So
bottom,
it's still there.
So here at the
very bottom.
cross references, they'll say master agreement. Or-
so right at the very bottom. Yeah, but let's go down further. So that's where cross-references, we would put, the policies that Director Art referenced and also the master agreement. And you said that we have some policies that list the master agreement at the bottom? Okay.
Is that like? Because I know you and I have talked about that sometimes there's things happening in policy that probably isn't practice that we should continue. Is that one that makes sense?
Yeah, I think it's just a cross-reference to another document.
What has precedence? So if somebody feels as if there's a staff conduct violation by policy that isn't addressed in the master agreement, how are we to operationalize that in the district?
If it's not in the master agreement,
Well,
policy.
we don't, so would somebody argue, well, it's not addressed in the master agreement, so therefore it can't be enforced? What's the precedence?
I think all of
When you get to the regulation level of this, there's a laundry list of things that have been added over time because of things that unfortunately happen in organizations like ours. So you could literally just almost cite the cases nationally or locally of, we need to add that. We have had issues of staff behavior that are sometimes argued under other language by the master agreement, academic freedom, that may fall into a space here that people feel is outside of staff conduct. How is that reconciled?
The only, as far as I know, that when the handbook and the policy are in conflict, it's the handbook that, no policy.
No,
Policy.
it's handbook.
It's handbook?
It's not? No, are you talking about meet and confer?
What
he said. He said when handbook is in conflict with policy, policy trumps handbook, just like state law trumps.
It's like policy.
Yeah.
Okay, where are we at?
That's a
I
good
was-
clarification.
Okay,
Yeah, we were just discussing whether or not to list it.
okay,
It sounds like people might be okay with that.
yep, let's be this. So the policies and the master, all those is fine. Are we done with? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, but I just have a general question, which to your point, how do we operationalize some of this? And so I guess a follow-up question is what kind of process would you follow if a person is challenged on some of these things? And I don't see it in my notes, but I guess because it's in regulation, so I could wait till, but you get regulation, we don't necessarily.
We
But
can still provide guidance.
Feedback.
Yes.
So I guess I'll just sit tight.
But the
then,
board
so-
only adopts the policy. We don't adopt the regulation usually. That's my understanding at least, Dr. X, right? The board adopts policy. Okay, so are we good with this policy?
I'll just really quick, if you scroll up to the very top, this is like a real quick grammar thing. The sentence that it says, staff members have a responsibility to make themselves familiar with and abide by federal and state laws. Then shouldn't it be and the policies and regulations of the district as these affect their work? Like just change the order. I just noticed that like it doesn't read well to me the way it's written right now.
I'll check it.
Okay, moving on.
Okay, the last one is the regulation.
Before we pull it up, when we're doing this, we're making visible people's personal emails. So is there a different way? Can we turn off the computers for a minute, but these aren't posted on board docs, these different versions. And so it's inappropriate for our board secretary's email to be viewed publicly.
Okay,
So I want to take a pause for a second and figure out how
The
to
only
do that.
way I can do that is to put the doc cam on, pull it up here, and then broadcast it. So it's just time consuming and Murphy might need to come and tell me which one we're trying to pull up.
Or could she just pull up the one that's on board docs and
Yeah,
Julie
let's
speak
pull-
to it?
let's pull up the one on board docs.
And don't pull up her version.
Yep.
She can just speak to it.
Pull up the one on board docs. We apologize for that, Melissa.
Or
You got docs.
or maybe make it where these screens are like your second monitor and you just, like I have monitor at work, I just drag it over my second monitor. Can we make that where this is like your second monitor and you drag a document over?
Which one am I pulling up right now?
That's a question for somebody else.
What do we do?
Which one am I?
The board docs one.
Okay.
You may be able to pull it up.
GBEB clean?
No, GBEB-R.
Clean,
Clean.
onboard docs, yeah.
That's the one. Okay, and if you can make it a little bigger, yeah, that's good. Go ahead, Director.
I'm counting down. So 7 down and 9 down. Initiating or extending contact with a student beyond the school day or outside of class times for the
Yeah.
staff member's personal purposes. Skip the personal errands one. And then inviting a student to a staff member's home without appropriate chaperones. So my comments to the side were staff can't hire a high school student as a babysitter, So I hope that in regulation, we can allow that people might have babysitters over that are their students, even like if I'm a staff member and I wanna
I
hire.
would not support that.
Me either.
Okay, well then that's good to know, that people should never have other people's children over if they are a staff member in
None
D11.
of their teacher to
or-
student.
I would think if it is a teacher-to-student relationship, it would fall as inappropriate behavior. I'm not saying that a staff member from D11 could not have a student as a babysitter, but I think it's a conflict of interest of relationship between what we're trying to preserve in an academic way that then could be construed as either conflict of interest or potential favoritism if it sat within the relationship of what happens in the classroom. So Greg might have a daughter, well, actually it wouldn't work because Greg works for me, but if Greg worked at Doherty and I was a student at Coronado and we lived next door to each other, I think that would be well within the expectations of neighborly ways that we operate. But if Greg were the teacher of a student and asked that student to be a babysitter, I think that would call into question a lot of different things that are, this is a regulation.
That's how I would differentiate it, yeah. If I'm a teacher here, but a Coronado kid is, wants to babysit, then there's no academic tied to it, that's great. But if it's, they're my 4th period student, that's a little bit different, yeah.
Well, and this is staff, it's not just you're the teacher and that's the kid, right? This is overall. And so that's something that in regulation or procedure or process that you might wanna have written down for how it's gonna go so that people can't say you play favorites. Or legally we run aground on.
Could you correct it by saying inviting a current or past student? Inviting a current or past student to a staff member's home? That kind of aligns it with, it was one of theirs.
It's
I don't know.
Well,
better
once they're a
to
past
stay as far away
student and they're
from that as
18, it's out of our
Wouldn't be
hands
close.
too.
That's
So,
true. So just current student, inviting a current student?
I visit,
Let's not work with the wordsmithing
Yeah.
right now.
yeah.
Okay, it's late in the evening.
Something like that.
People are
raising
waiting.
it, and I appreciate that, and so maybe it can just be, work that out for moving forward so that there is protection, but also some guidance and.
So just capture, if you could capture Director Ott's feedback or concern out there, and if that is something that can be wordsmithed out there to reflect that, if that's,
It's a great.
yeah,
there's something inherently wrong with, okay, look, I work in prisons. Okay, so if I go to a prison and I talk to, hey, in prison, I know, poor guy, by law, I cannot have communication with him if he gets out. Right, because there is the probability that something can go wrong. So that you can't do that. I can't minister with him in prison, deal with him in prison, and then say, hey, when you get out, come here. I can get in trouble. And there's a reason for that, because a lot of things happen when you have that relationship inside. The same thing with schools. You have that relationship inside. I don't care if it's past, present. You have a relationship, and then you take that relationship outside into the school, to somebody's house. You are asking for trouble. So you need to stay as far away from that as possible. And if it means some teacher don't get a babysitter, well, that's tough. Because you're playing with fire.
okay. So you've captured both sides. Superintendent Gall, you can figure out what the concern is and see if that can be reflected. Anything more?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So second to last bullet in this section, giving gifts or money to the student. I would suggest gifts of substantial value, because we have teachers that incentivize learning. They're handing out candy or snacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've just said, is a snack a gift? Thanks, Melissa,
Okay,
Oh,
could we put
Sounds
the,
good. You can add it.
yeah, of substantial value, could we add that? Okay, moving on.
Or something that you find is useful but allows gifts of insubstantial value.
Okay, maybe you put a dollar amount, right, so giving gifts about $25.
Let
So,
him figure it out.
yeah, let them figure it
Moving
out.
on.
Yep,
Okay,
okay,
go
appreciate that. Under prohibited communications, again, looking, here we've specified district's parent partnership principles, but can we broaden that maybe to district policy in this case? Because we want staff members communicating with students and parents and guardians in a consistent professional manner and in accordance with more than just the parent partnership principles. They better be doing KB, they better be doing KBA.
So, in accordance with district's policy, that's policies.
I mean, I'll just say AKB is like the mother of KB or KBA. So by saying what you just
told
said,
me that AKB though is, well, it's foundational, and remember, it is referenced in the GBEB as a policy, but with regulation, I'd like to see it more broadly. And what I was going to say is, you told me how slimmed down it was, how we're trying to hit the high points. But I think we need,
You almost want more meat
yeah,
here
we
by
need to
saying
dig
district
in
policy.
and
Well,
say,
we'll add on to it. I think the best way to do it is to add on the sub-policies instead of eliminating the overarching policy from a regulation standpoint. I think the goal here is to make a commitment to parents that say that the things that they hold near and dear are the things that we are ensuring we regulate.
We're gonna protect.
like my point was that if you are referencing AKB, you're therefore also referencing KB. Because they fall under. I mean,
I raised it, I don't, if
Okay,
you wanna
you
just
can let
keep
Mr.
it
Gall
on.
and Dr. X
Right.
figure out if they wanna leave that there or.
okay,
Yeah, fine with that.
let's move on.
Then in the next group of bullets, the second to last one, willfully disclosing personal or other inappropriate private matters. And on this one, how do we define private matters? My note here is, can staff mention their own families? Can they display a photo? Can they speak about their weekend
Inappropriate.
plans?
Inappropriate.
Inappropriate.
That's,
And,
it doesn't say that up front.
It does right there.
It says willfully disclosing personal.
Or other inappropriate.
So anything personal becomes inappropriate.
No.
So maybe wordsmith,
Dr.
willfully
X,
disclosing inappropriate personal or other private matters.
but this was discussed in the policy committee. I know that this language, and they wordsmithed it and they came to this agreement and
If you wanna move inappropriate before personal, that's fine.
Is that what you want?
It says the same thing, but it helps you feel
I
better.
think that would be helpful, and.
Would you want to talk about your dog that you just got or
Thank
or
you.
something? That makes sense.
Yes, and
But
the way it
inappropriate
reads
is
to
the
me right
line.
now, that's personal. You better not be talking about your dog, Jason.
okay, let's move inappropriate before personal. Okay, captured that? Okay, going forward.
And then here too, adding the 3 additional policies. JRA, JRC, KB, and KDA
As cross-reference.
as cross-references. I didn't mention master agreement here because I figured we could do that on both of them and the other employee things, if that seems reasonable. And then I started down this path on the last one and said, no, let's go to the regulation. How do you operationalize this? How do you decide that someone's dog is okay to discuss, what,
So
how do
the
you follow
default
up
of
on
how
that?
we operate every day is on the assumption that we are all operating in good faith. It is impossible to evaluate without information coming back to the staff in some form or another, of which then investigations in accordance with all things that happen against policy or regulation are conducted. Will we ever get the exact definition of inappropriate? I think any of us can go into our emails and discern that it may also be in the eye of the recipient and maybe not in the intent of the deliverer. And so I would hope that this will eliminate egregious behavior and will allow us to have adult and mature conversations about questionable behavior, but not send us down rabbit holes of assuming that every conversation is illicit by definition.
Correct.
That's a good way of putting it.
Thank you.
Okay, any further thoughts? Okay, so you've got all the feedback, comments, if you can make those minor revisions, and this circles back, we'll figure it out when probably June 14th, I don't know, whenever the next board meeting is scheduled. It can circle back at that time as, as action items at that time. Okay, and when it comes back as action items at the time, since
Can we
we
just go to
had
consent?
this conversation, it's going to be quick comments from the board and we will move on to calling the vote. And the board can choose to vote whichever way they want to on the policy.
We can't move it to consent.
No, let's provide some comments out there. Okay, we didn't talk about it, it can come as action. So board members, if they want to provide some feedback, they can. Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, finally, I know that all you guys have been patiently waiting out here. This was a marathon board special meeting, and when the agenda came, I expected it to be this long, but I expected it. That's why when Director Art asked me, why did this start at this time, I said like, I do expect it to go. And as anticipated, it went this. So thank you all for your patience. And some of you may be at the graduation tomorrow. We'll see you there. And good night. We are officially adjourned at 10:35 p.m.